Established veterans, newcomers, and rookies all stand out as the New Orleans Saints wrap up the first week of training camp. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network on SI. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're recapping week one of New Orleans Saints training camp. I want to tell you why injuries are a major concern around this team one week. And we're going to take a look at play action playing maybe an even bigger role in this offense than we initially anticipated. And we're going to lead everything off by taking a look at the players that stood out during week one, leading off with three rookies that should sit atop or near the top of the list. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more over at FanDuel because this summer they are hooking up all customers with a free boost or bonus every day. That's right. That means that there's something for everyone every day over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get started. I think some of the most impressive players for the New Orleans Saints to open up the first week of training camp are three top drafted rookies. First round offensive lineman Taliese Fuaga, who has continued to start over on the left tackle spot, and who center Erik McCoy, who has been a veteran now for a while and is the leader of this offensive line, said that he was the best rookie that he has ever seen on an offensive line. Also mentioned that he didn't want to build him up too much, but of course did that while also still building him up quite a bit. Believes he's going to be a lockdown starting tackle in the NFL. Rookie cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, who the New Orleans Saints traded up to grab in the second round of the 2024 NFL Draft, has consistently been in good position, in good coverage, has been starting on the outside, right? Remember, he was going to be competing both on the outside and in the slot. We haven't really seen him much in the slot just yet, but we've definitely seen him outside in both now base and nickel sets. When they go to those nickel sets, you see Alontae Taylor holding down the slot position. And Kool-Aid has played very well there. He's been targeted. He's given up some catches, things like that. Don't get me wrong, but he's always constantly been in good position. I haven't really seen him get beat or left in the dust. And of course, he recovered a fumble on day 4 as the New Orleans Saints wrapped up their first week of training camp. And then, of course, Spencer Rattler, New Orleans Saints rookie quarterback who was drafted in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft. And of course, a lot of people were very excited to see exactly what he was going to look like, especially in this new offensive system that feels like it should be very comfortable for a young Spencer Rattler. And really, day 4 to wrap up week one was his best day of his early NFL offseason thus far. That's accounting for rookie minicamp, mandatory minicamps, and OTAs as well. Was 7 of 9 on the day, including a big 40-yard deep bomb to undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver out of Yale, Mason Tipton. The two also connected on another big play later. Those three rookies, Fuaga, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then, of course, Rattler, have looked really, really good to wrap up week one here in Irvine, California, as the New Orleans Saints continue on with training camp. But it's not just the rookies that are the newcomers that are standing out. There's some fresh faces that have stood out as well that are coming in with some NFL experience. And I'll lead off with wide receiver Cedrick Wilson Jr. Now, the wide receiver room behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed is one that's going to be a big question mark all offseason long. That's okay. Ideally, sans injury, you don't really see Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed off the field very much, right? This isn't the New Orleans Saints offense of old that gets into key game situations and pulls its star players off of the field, or at least it shouldn't be that New Orleans Saints offense any longer. And so keeping that in consideration, I think it's okay that things are still kind of finding their way, especially because there's been 4 days of training camp but really only 2 days of the passing game having really opened up. And one guy that has consistently found a way to stand out during this time is wide receiver Cedrick Wilson. The New Orleans Saints signed Cedrick Wilson as a free agent this offseason to a 2-year deal, the only free agent acquisition to get more than a 1-year contract. And coming here into training camp, he was one of the guys that we assumed, and I think we should say assumed correctly, was going to be in contention for that, I'll call it number 3 option, right? You can call it wide receiver 3, you can call it slot receiver, you can call it third wide receiver, call it whatever you want. But to be the third option at the position for the Saints behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, we figured that competition was most tightly going to be contested between himself and A.T. Perry. But A.T. Perry might make what will be Monday's show list of players that need to show more going into week 2, because the performance so far during training camp has been a little underwhelming. Although he has had a couple of nice catches, one where he found like a really nice spot in the zone, but that's kind of it. He hasn't been showing out consistently, and he's been playing kind of a lot of third team reps as well. So I think he'd like to climb his way back up the ladder, of course. So when we look at Cedrick Wilson, we saw him make a nice big play down the right sideline where I think really the defense thought that the play was going to be blown dead because it was very clearly a sack. But then he came around and made another big play on a diving catch with Kool-Aid McKinstry. Again, very tightly in coverage, in good position, just a better throw and catch by Derek Carr and Cedrick Wilson. And Cedrick Wilson came down with it. He has been the guy that has also been contributing much as a blocker in the run game, which is going to be pivotal for this New Orleans Saints offense. No block, no rock, as they say. He is one of those guys that's going to come in and help the New Orleans Saints be able to do that. I want to shout out Stanley Morgan Jr. in that aspect as well, because he has been blocking his tail off here throughout camp. But Cedrick Wilson, I think, is the kind of newly acquired veteran new face that I would look at and say, okay, he has been a standout guy for me so far. On the other side of the ball, it's got to be Willie Gaye, right? Willie Gaye has been excellent. He's rushed the passer. He's done a very good job filling those run fits in the run game and run defense. He has done great in coverage. He was covering Taysom Hill on an out route in day 4 on Saturday. He was able to pick up enough speed, sideline to sideline coverage to be able to knock the ball away. I believe that was a pass from Derek Carr, if I'm picturing that correctly. Good stuff from Willie Gaye, who has done a lot of really, really good stuff and brings a ton of energy with him as well. Somebody from one of the TV stations mentioned that they had like 20 straight minutes of watching or not 20 straight minutes, but 20 minutes throughout the first week of film during practices and warm-ups and stretch and all that other stuff where Willie Gaye is dancing. Jamal Williams is dancing. All that, like, these guys just bring so much energy to this team, and Willie Gaye has done a really good job kind of helping to bring that infusal over on the defensive side, and he's also bringing a lot of hype, bringing a lot of production over on his side as well. Some established guys, Pete Werner also standing out at the position, Demario Davis also standing out at the position. Carl Granderson simply cannot be stopped. He's making a play every single day. Over on the offensive side of the football, Erik McCoy continues to look really good, communicate well in this offense. That's been a lot of fun to watch. Foster Morrow has stood out for me big time. Derek Carr has had a good time as well. So lots of positives when it comes to the established veterans, and that's to be expected when it comes to these guys coming in. Alvin Kamara looking fluid and explosive and all those things. But I think that, like, that's to be expected. Typically, when you walk into training camp, it's the veterans, and particularly the veterans over on the defensive side, but veterans as a whole, the ones that stand out. And then the young guys eventually close the gap. That's what I think we're going to be focusing on a lot in week 2, but we'll cover more on that on Monday. Coming up next, I want to take a look at play action because, believe it or not, I think play action is going to play an even bigger role than we might have initially anticipated in this New Orleans Saints offense. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Sports never stop sporting, and they definitely never stop sporting over at FanDuel, who keep sports alive all year long. Doesn't matter the NBA finals are done, doesn't matter the NHL finals are done, the WNBA, the MLB, the Olympics, and so much more, all still ongoing. And FanDuel is making it fun for you all summer long, because right now, all summer long, FanDuel is giving a free boost or bonus to all customers daily. That's right. That means that there's something for everyone every day, all summer long at FanDuel today. You can get in on some early stuff. You can grab the opening line for the New Orleans Saints favored at home against the Carolina Panthers, over on Derek Carr's passing yards, under on Derek Carr's passing yards, or you can even take a look at a bunch of stuff going on with the Olympics as well. So go check them out today over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to make the most out of your summer with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, family, we expected that things like motion and play action and the outside zone run game were all going to factor in big time to what the New Orleans Saints look to do in 2024 with their new offense. But it looks like play action might play an even bigger role than we initially expected, if you can believe it or not. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream as well, bringing you all the biggest stories from around the world of sports on the 24/7 stream program, specifically to deliver those stories to you from the local experts that cover the teams and know them the best, just like we do here when it comes to the New Orleans Saints on Locked On Saints. So go and check it out today on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app or on the Locked On Sports Today YouTube page, proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We really thought that play action was going to play a big role in the New Orleans Saints offense. There was no doubt about that. But as we sit back and we've watched now rookie mini camps and OTAs and mandatory mini camps and now the first week of training camp, it looks like it's going to play an even bigger role than we expected. And you've heard myself and several other of the wonderful people here in Irvine, in New Orleans, covering this team, talk all about play action and all this. Play action is going to be such a big thing, and the offense is going to be predicated on the run game, which is going to make the play action game so much better. And there's all these different varieties of play action that they'll utilize. You've heard us talk about it like crazy, so you might be hearing like, oh, it's going to play an even bigger role than we expect. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how is that possible? You never shut up about it, Ross. And that's true. But it turns out that it still feels like it's going to play an even bigger role than we thought. Why do I say that? Because it feels like as we sit back in training camp and we're taking these notes and we write things down like, 4, and I do an arrow, which means that it's complete to, 22. And in parentheses, I'll put a little number in coverage, whatever the number of the player is. And then I'll take some notes off to the side of that, right? So, dig, right side, intermediate, toe tap, something like that, right? Just like little notes for myself so that I know what the plays are. And then I look at the notes by the time that I'm done and it's like PA, motion in PA. And every one of those PAs is play action. And that could be a straight drop back, just a direct drop back with a little fake right up the middle, come up, deliver. Or it's a play action rollout to where you're running the play action, but then you're also running and getting the quarterback out off of that play action as well, getting him moving and moving the pocket with him. Or it's a play action bootleg where you fake the outside zone run and then swing back over that shoulder, go to the opposite side, and then deliver as you're crossing the field. The waggles where it's a pair of play actions where it might be a fake 2 on a dive and then a fake on maybe an end around or something like that. And we see all of it. Play after play after play after play. The Saints ran an actual end around on Saturday to wrap up, or on the final day of the week to Rashid Shaheed. But before they even handed him the ball off on the end around, they had faked an inside zone run or an inside run to the halfback that was in on the play. They've even put play actions in their run plays. It's been so much, and they're focused on it too. I'm not just talking about what we're seeing in terms of play actions in team drills. When they go and they do their walkthrough, so typically like the rhythm of practice would be that they'll go out there, they'll do their walkthrough, then they'll do stretched where they get in their stretch lines and stuff like that, or they'll do like some walks to warm up, things like that. Then they'll do their stretch, and then the offense will go to one field, the defense will go to the other field, and in the process of doing that, as they split up, you'll get to individual drills. So the running backs will come over to one side, the tight ends will go somewhere, the quarterbacks will go somewhere. I was watching the quarterbacks, and then every now and then there will be some things going on to where it's, quarterbacks and halfbacks or running backs are working together, or quarterbacks and wide receivers are working together, stuff like that. So on Saturday, the quarterbacks and the running backs were working together. And what they were doing was they were working kind of a pitch to the running back, rolling into a bootleg going the opposite way. And so the quarterback would snap the ball, turn over their left shoulder, let's say, pitch the ball to a running back that was going the opposite way, and then roll over that shoulder. And then as a means of completing what would be a bootleg, a coach would throw them another football, a second football, which they would catch, finish their bootleg rollout, and then deliver the pass. And so the thought process behind this is that if you want the play action to be effective, if you want it to work, if you want it to actually fool a defense, you have to run your play actions to look the exact same as the actual run play itself. So not only are you practicing what the actual pitch is, but then you're also practicing the rollout. So it was a way to get the quarterbacks and the motion of here's how you actually pitch it, so that when you go to do the play action, you feel that motion. And then you continue on through the rollout, get your second football, and then go and throw it. This has been a focus for this team this entire training camp so far, and I'll go so far as to say the entire offseason so far. It took a little while for like play action and motion and stuff like that to pop up in Spencer Rattler's reps, but that was just him getting the early installs and all those other things. But then now everyone's doing it. Everybody's doing it, and we're seeing it over and over again. I would say that we're seeing it on, I don't think it's ridiculous to say that we're seeing it on more than 50% of plays. I don't think that's even close to ridiculous to say that. I think it might be ridiculous of me to say that it's only happening more than 50%, because I could probably get away with saying 65% of these offensive plays have included play action so far. And maybe that's pushing it to get to 65, but man, it sure feels like that is just the bread and butter. I mean, Eric McCoy spoke to us, and when we were talking to him, he was asked about play action. And the first thing he said was, oh, play action's my pride and joy. It's his pride and joy. He loves operating play action. He said the more the better. And the New Orleans Saints are definitely making good on that. Just as a little bit of a comparison about the trend of play action attempts over the course of the past 5 years for the New Orleans Saints, we've seen these numbers tick up and then back down and then start to tick up a little bit again last year. So in 2019 and in 2020, we saw 84 play action attempts. So those were actual attempted passes off of play action, play action plays, not one that was called and then they didn't get the pass off, or one that was called and they were sacked, or one that was called and it was a throwaway, whatever it was. 84 attempts those first 2 years. Then in 2021, that leapt up to 109. Sean Payton's last season. And then 2022, that's plummeted all the way down to 77 attempts. Last year moved up to 91 attempts. If we go and we look at Klint Kubiak and what he did in 2021 with Kirk Cousins, it was only 113 attempts. So it wasn't that much, but it feels like the New Orleans Saints are going to have around that, and it feels like much more than that potentially going into, or by the time that we're said and done with 2024 for this team. It feels like play action is very much not just going to be a part of the DNA, not just going to be a part of the identity. It's going to be kind of like how on the defensive side, like the nickel defense became the base defense. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see more play action passes than we're going to see non-play action passes, which of course we won't, because that's just not how football works. Is typically you're handing the ball off on a lot of those too, on those run plays, and you're not going to accompany a lot of run plays with play action. But it sure feels like there's a lot of play action about the setup. And look, that plays to the strength of Derek Carr. That also plays well to guys like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. We've shared the number before, but Underdog Fantasy has it at about 20% in terms of the boost in production on yards per route run on play action passes for wide receivers. That's big. That's really, really big. Like if you want to see Chris Olave top 1,200 yards, top 1,300 yards, that's the percentage mark that helps to get him there. So I'm very curious to see when they get into actual game action, just how much play action we see, because we're seeing a ton of it here in training camp. Coming up next, I want to take a look at injuries. It's not all been roses and rainbows for the New Orleans Saints. Injuries have been a major concern, and it's got me a little bit too concerned now about their 2024 outlook. Let's break that down as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at Game Time. It's the only app that I use anywhere that I go when it comes to the events that I might be looking for wherever I'm traveling. In fact, John Hendricks and we're picking up some tickets to go to an Angels game on Sunday. So while you're watching this, we might be hanging out at the Angels game. We were to pick up tickets for like $6 a piece over towards the left infield and everything. It's awesome. Awesome spot to be. Awesome spot to go and check out. Tickets for your favorite events. And it doesn't have to be sports either. There's comedy, there's music, there's drama like theater and all that good stuff too. So go and check it out. You can see directly views from your seats before you buy the tickets, flash deals, zone deals as well. Tickets even get cheaper when you get closer to the time of your event. You can take all the guesswork out of buying tickets for your MLB experience, just like I did, by heading over and downloading the Game Time app today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Listen, there's a lot of good things going on throughout the first week of New Orleans Saints training camp here in Irvine, California, but I have one big major concern about this team, and it's sincere and demonstrable inability to make it through a single practice without an injury. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here and for checking us out. Don't forget, we are your team every day. The Saints are off today, but still wanted to bring you this episode. We'll have a fresh episode for you again tomorrow morning. No live show later on because there's no practice. Tomorrow's show, we're going to be taking a look at the players that need to have more standout moments as they move into week 2. And of course, with the padded practices, who are we about to learn a lot more about? We'll kind of highlight that as well. But through the first week of practices for the New Orleans Saints, there have been some good things, all right? There's been some great stuff, 5 interceptions for the defense, as well as a fumble forced and recovered. Some defenders might say 2 fumbles forced and recovered, but Rashid Shaheed said he was down. I agree with Rashid. I thought he was down as well. But either way, 6 takeaways over the course of 4 practices. You've seen big connections downfield now over on the offensive side. The run game starting to open up. Comfort on the offensive line. Pass rush from the defensive line. There's been lots of good stuff for this New Orleans Saints team. But one of the biggest concerns that I now have about this team is its inability to stay healthy. It has been a big issue. The first two days, a pair of players each leaving during practice, one player leaving in the third practice, and then again today, no one leaving during practice, but Bryan Bresee not available during the practice on Saturday because he was out with a foot injury. And he was just making his way back on top of all that because his work was very light during OTAs and mini camps and things like that. If the New Orleans Saints can't find a way to stay healthy, it doesn't matter how improved their offense is. They're not going to be able to win games if they can't keep their best talent out on the field. And while there have been some good signs of progress for those injuries, Shane Lemieux back out on the field today, although he wasn't participating. He was watching off to the side. Same thing for running back Kendre Miller, who also left with an injury a few days ago. We've seen Juwan Johnson continue to progress. Tano Passanio be present and feels like he's continuing to progress as well, although no one should expect him to be back until mid to late season anyway with that Achilles injury. I don't know if it's a result of the shift of the travel and practicing somewhere unfamiliar. It feels like this was always an issue over at the Greenbrier as well with the injuries that would happen when they would practice there. But as of right now, things just don't feel like they're shaping up well for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to health. And that could be detrimental to the outlook of their 2024 season. I've been picking the New Orleans Saints to win 9 or 10 games this season. I think I've recently shifted my prediction back to 9 games. I don't see any reason for them to lose more games or be any worse than they were last year. I think that the system helps them with that, but I don't know how much the roster has really improved. So can they win more games than they did last year while having major question marks with a bunch of new faces on the offensive line and, of course, questions on the defensive line? If you're a team that wants to compete, the last 3 questions that you want to be asking about a team are the 3 questions that we're now stuck asking about the New Orleans Saints themselves. What's their offensive line going to look like? What's the production of their defensive line going to look like? And are they going to be able to stay healthy? Those are now the 3 questions that we're asking about New Orleans. And there are some things trending in the right direction when it comes to the offensive line. I'd even go so far as to say there are some things that suggest a trend on the right direction when it comes to the defensive line. But so far, I've seen nothing at all that should alleviate any concern about the health on this team, because the Saints are not showing right now that they have what it takes to either keep these players healthy, or the players are having issues keeping themselves healthy, whatever it might be. It has to be the biggest shortcoming of training camp thus far. And I don't know how you curb it. I don't. That's not, then thankfully nobody pays me to do it, because if anybody paid me to do it, I'd screw it up immediately anyway, and I'd be banished from the city of New Orleans with haste. So at least it's not my issue to fix, but it's definitely one that I want to point to and say, boy, I sure would like to see if the New Orleans Saints are able to figure this out. And if they're able to not only keep the players that are out on the field right now on the field, but get the players that are now missing time back out on the field, and see if they're able to keep them out on the field as well. I think that there might be some cautious nature to some of it as well. Saints knew they had a day off on Sunday, so if you can help a player get 2 days off by only missing one practice, sometimes you take that, especially with padded practices on the way and the physicality about the tick up and all these other things. I get that. So maybe there's a little bit of caution there. But Monday, if all 6 of the players that the New Orleans Saints have been missing or have now had leave for injury for different reasons and at different times are not on the field, especially after a day off, that's going to be a major concern for this team. So I just want to point it out. I want to discuss it because I think that it's easily the biggest eyebrow raiser of the New Orleans Saints training camp session so far. And as I mentioned, there's some good trajectories going on. Shane Lemieux spotted on the field before practice. Kendre Miller watching off to the side, things like that. But where's Marshon Lattimore? Is he going to be able to get back out there? Will Bryan Bresee be back out there tomorrow? Will Justin Herron work his way back? There's just so many of these question marks now. So definitely a big one that we're going to be watching. And remember, the Saints also brought in Chandler Brewer because they needed another offensive lineman to help them out over on that side. So they ended up bringing somebody in. So that's not particularly good news, right? That doesn't particularly project well for either Justin Herron. I guess I would say Justin Herron, because Shane Lemieux we've now seen out on the field. But man, I just think that like health, like consistently an issue for New Orleans. And as of training camp thus far, I haven't seen the luck change there, whether it's bad luck or whatever. It just doesn't seem to be changing. So we'll see. We'll see if they're able to get that fixed up, because if they can, then all of a sudden you start feeling a lot better about this team right now, because you want to feel good about what they're doing. There's a lot of positive stuff, but it's hard to when you're seeing an issue like this struggling with health. So maybe it's all just bad luck. Maybe it'll all curb, but certainly would love to see it curb for this New Orleans Saints team that's clearly busting their butts out there trying to get better for 2024. All right, y'all, I appreciate you very much, as always, for coming through and making us your first listen of the day every day. We'll be back with you twice tomorrow in the morning, looking ahead to week 2, padded practices, who's got to stand out. And then, of course, we'll also be taking a look at our live show after those padded practices to make sure that you are all covered with everything you need to know from how that day's practice went. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.